your self-worth is not defined by the partner that you have. And that is what we were raised in. We were raised to learn that like, oh, honey, it's okay. You're going to be enough when you get married. It's okay. When your partner shows up, don't worry, you're going to be more. You're going to be worth more. No, your self-worth is not defined by the partner that you have. Your self-worth is defined by you. And the best version of a partner that you can have is someone that makes you even better than you already are, but they don't make you who you are.
I'm very excited to welcome back Julie and Lauren, who joined us for season 1. We had 2 incredible episodes. If you didn't see those episodes, go back and watch them. But just to share a little bit about who they are 2 incredible therapists and women that work in my practice, and I'm so grateful for them. And I thought it was really important to have them back because we had John Berger on earlier talking about his books, Datanomics and Make Your Move. And I wanted the perspective of you two who are in the dating world. I've been out of the dating world to see what you thought about these books and what you thought about his suggestions as 2 women in this dating world. So we were talking a little bit off camera before we started. So I think this is going to we're going to end with a bang. It's been a long filming day. And I think this is going to be a very juicy episode because I can already tell you guys have some strong reactions. So I guess, wherever you guys want to dive in, like tell me what you felt about the books.
Well, I just read Make Your Move. I didn't read Datanomics, but I thought John did a really great job at explaining, what Datanomics was about and how it prompted him to write Make Your Move. And overall, I was angry after reading it. And listening to what he said on your book or on the podcast too. He's an author. He wants to make money. But hearing him say, women, it's up to you to change things because men just aren't going to buy self-help books really upset me.
Oh, yes. Tell me more about what made that. Yeah, I hear you. Well, it's interesting you say that too. And I definitely want you to dive in more because a lot of what we've been talking about in different contexts on these episodes is like this burden of responsibility on women. And I think we touched upon it in our episode as well. So much of it falls on us, especially when you think about fertility or birth control or motherhood, egg freezing. So that's very interesting takeaway and lens. And I think that kind of aligns with this burden of responsibility. And I love that. And that's why I love these conversations because I didn't pick up on that. But now that you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. So that made you angry.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it made both of us angry. It was, I really enjoyed reading the book. It stressed me out completely. Like every stat for a woman over 30 was just not positive in any way. But what I found really interesting is that we have all been socialized from these rules. And it was very much like an argument for, or the way my takeaways from the book was like, his argument was pointed towards, well, if women have been raised this way, now we just need to teach them how to work differently.
Oh,
like you've been socialized in these rules. So now you just need to learn something new. Whereas we were talking about this on the drive up here, like, where is the conversation for why are we not including men in more empathetic conversations?
Okay, so now this is sparking my memory because you two did ask, like, what was, because we have another episode with him coming out next week, and you two were both asking what was that like, and it's been a long day, and that was back in July, so it's not totally fresh in my mind. But I will say he did, every time I tried to say women, he included men. So I think it's for everybody listening, and I'm not invalidating anything either of you are saying. I'm just trying to remember that conversation because and Shelly was here, so she could remind me. But I think he's like, I'm not just saying women, but men. Totally. So
that was on the podcast.
Right. Right. Really, that's what I was about to say too.
Yeah. In the podcast, he kept saying like, okay, it's not just women, it's people. But you read the entire book and never once does he go back towards, let's include men into this conversation. It is always, if you are a woman and you are doing this, X, Y, Z, here's what you need to do, which goes back to what Julie was saying, which was we are consistently the ones that are being asked to change because there's not a market for self-help for men. They're not going to buy the book. And he deliberately says... Oh my God,
that is, that's a really incredible and important viewpoint. Yeah.
And he says on the podcast, he's like, I got paid to write a book for women in dating.
Well, and he did share, this doesn't align. I mean, it doesn't take away from anything you're saying at all. He did share the reason that he wrote the book and he didn't want to write that book at first was that he did his book tour for Datanomics. And he is a math guy, stats guy. He's like, I never thought I'd be in the like dating world, but he's like, I went on this tour and women are like, okay, great. These are the stats, but what do we do? And like his editor or whoever was like, you have to like, they want tools. But I'm hearing both of you and I don't know if that was...
Again, I understand his perspective and he was doing what was asked of him. But I think it was really upsetting to me because like we're saying, women are constantly doing and changing and carrying the emotional labor and emotional load. So to kind of hear, well, men just don't buy this or men just are emotionally unavailable. So women, it's up to you to date differently, to help them and also help yourself experience different results. It was just upsetting to read. Like I heard his points and I loved all of his research. And I think it was warranted just given his backgrounds, like just that he's a journalist, he's an author, he's not a mental health professional, he's a married, middle-aged, white, hetero man, you know, a lot of privilege. But so I liked the research, but overall it was upsetting. It was just disappointing. I think this could have been an opportunity for John to write a book or start this shift of holding men accountable and helping to teach men these skills that women already know. And we're just waiting for men to step up.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Again, I'm back to this burden of responsibility is here's another thing you women should do. They're not making the move. They're not, or maybe they're not ready or they're not asking you out. So you do it.
That was my takeaway and it didn't sit well with me.
It felt like there was, it's funny because he wrote a lot about like not wanting to put pressure on women to like adhere to the rules, but essentially he just gave us a whole new set of rules.
I know. No, and I'm so happy you two are here because like I've been out of the dating game. And I think what I was trying to say off camera too, it's like, I'm just here to facilitate people's stories and hear their lenses. But it's so cool to have you both on and help me see it through this different lens, especially someone not in the dating world. It's like, you're right. And now you're just establishing a different set of rules. I saw the value in a little bit more assertiveness. And I guess I was looking through the lens of some of the clients that I work with where they sort of get really twisted up on being vulnerable or expressing that they like somebody or being on the apps and like no one's asking them out. And and we talked about this on our episode too. Like, did you ask them out? So I think there is, and I'd love to hear what you both think of this. I think there is some value in women being more bold, or maybe it's just everybody being more clear.
The therapist part of me loved that we are encouraging like clear communication. And I did appreciate that John was saying you don't have to take on all of the work and all of the labor of a relationship, but just give men the green light, open the door, and then allow them to take it from there. And I thought that was fair. But something that we were thinking of, kind of just considering his moves and his suggestions, we wish that attachment theory was included in this conversation.
Oh, totally. Well, and again, that's it's not through a therapeutic lens.
Exactly. But we were thinking, okay, if an anxiously attached woman is reading this book and she is said to kind of like initiate and like try to connect and like make these moves, it's kind of reinforcing her anxious attachment style of needing another person to feel grounded, to feel reassured, to be more stable. And that's just dangerous territory.
Yeah. Not having that understanding or therapeutic lens. Yeah.
I think it's really important too that like, listen, I love autonomy. I love being bold, but I also think that it's very critical that if you're in the dating scene, you need to know what feels right, safe, and good for you.
Yes.
And that a lot of the times it's super easy to pick up a book and say like, this feels so good. Of course, I'm just going to go and do it. And you're actually negating your own signals for what feels right. So if you are like a very calm individual who might be a little bit more timid, going up to somebody in a bar is going to feel horrible.
Yeah.
It's not going to align with where you feel you might meet the most conducive partner. But I also fully advocate for like, if you see someone that you're interested in a way that feels authentic to you, it's great to initiate a conversation. It's great to inquire if they are also available. Julie and I had spoken about this when we touched base on the podcast. Like the thought or the act of courting has fallen off the radar.
Yes.
And
yes.
personally, I love courting.
It's so fun. Yes.
It's so fun.
I think that's the thing too. There's the fun in dating is really removed. I think that's part of his perspective. And I'd love to get into this too on the apps, that it's transactional.
Yeah.
But that's why your episode, both of you, the episodes we did last season were so great, because you both have great narratives about dating and how to still invite some fun and it not be so much pressure and stress. But yeah, I think the courting is, it's a fun part of it.
Well, I went on a date once with a guy from a dating app, and he asked to go get coffee and walk around Madison Square Park. And I was like, when I got the ask, I was like, oh, God, okay, like, here's another coffee date. It's fine. This man utilized a half hour of time so brilliantly that he was like, okay, I want to get to know you. I want to know where you're from. I'm going to tell you where I'm from, what I do for work. Do we align on values? Do we align on all of the basics? And at the end of the half hour, he was like, okay, I feel like we connected. If you agree, would you like to go to dinner?
Oh.
And it was a game changer for our first date. We ended up dating because by the time we got to the first date, all of those like anxious questions, those anxious thoughts that are like, you're a stranger from the internet, you're a hell of a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what I view courting as. Like, take that time. It's okay to ask about their family. It's okay to ask about their jobs. It's okay to ask questions that are going to make you feel more comfortable. So when you're sitting across the table from someone for a drink or for a 2.5-hour dinner, you're a little bit calmer.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's can be the responsibility of both parties is like, it's okay to ask those questions, but I think there is a lot of hesitation like to do that. Like first 30 minutes, I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to ask these questions, more in-depth questions, and then we'll see if, we'll spend more time together. But I think when I read the book, I think that's what I thought of. And part of being more bold was cut to the chase. Like, what do you want? What are you looking for? Are we compatible? What are your values? Who are you as a person? And I don't know. You both tell me, because I'm out of this world. But like, I think, and I can only think back to my dating experiences where it was too much fluff or too much like, because whatever the narratives of, I don't want to be too needy. I don't want to come across too pushy. I want to be the cool girl, that it didn't allow for that, that type of courting that you're talking about.
I mean, a big part of the book, too, that stands out to me is John's personal theory that the Me Too movement is why men are so hesitant. And it really seemed like that was just a personal theory of his. I think like he asked one of his friends, his male friends who was dating, like, how has the Me Too movement affected how you approach women? And that was really interesting for me to read. Like, as a woman, I just never really considered that was a fear or a big consideration that men had. Part of me wonders how valid that, or what the research is behind that fear. Like, I don't know how common men are thinking about this. And I'm glad that men are more cognizant of the basic concepts of consent, but there's a lot of space in between harassing or assaulting a woman and just consistently showing interest and courting or just initiating. And why aren't they initiating? Like, is the Me Too movement the real reason? Or like, I want to hear more from men. So do we.
We're dying to get more men on. Yeah. I think it's really an unknown, right? And I think every episode I'm saying, I find myself saying, like, we want more men on here to help us understand what's really happening. Like, what's the barrier for them? I think, if you're humanizing everybody in an experience, like, everybody has their own attachment styles, everybody has their own fears, everybody has their own narratives that get in the way of them maybe initiating or asking or being vulnerable. I think at the core, everyone's just trying to keep themselves safe, whatever that looks like. Yeah. And maybe that's got to be part of the conversation, is that like everybody's coming to the table with some insecurity or fear.
Yeah, and just kind of tying it back to our first point, just with our anger, it's like, well, men are scared because of what other men do. So now women, you have to step up and make them feel better for what their gender has done.
Well, it's not our obligation on dates to make our date feel safe. It's our job to make sure that we feel safe. And it's their job to make sure that they feel safe, not just physically, but also like psychologically and emotionally. And I think that's also like a part that he doesn't really touch on in the book that I kind of wish he did. Like, I think a lot of social media and a lot of culture right now is kind of that like rush of like, oh my God, I've met the one. And it's so quick.
Mm-hmm.
And now don't get me wrong. I fully believe in love at first sight. Like I love love, but we are not paying enough attention to what it means for us to build those really small moments of intimacy that actually make you feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those really small, tiny moments where it's like, okay, it's kind of illogical that I'm going to feel totally 100% comfortable on a first date with a stranger from the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I should ask the question, what would make me feel more comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Should I pick a spot that I've been to 1,000 times? Should I pick a spot where I know that my friends are around the corner because that's going to make me feel better? Like, I feel like a lot of the stuff in the book was, okay, here's all the things that you can do to just like put yourself more out there and go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Versus here's all the things that you can do that make you feel like a better version of you. So when you do end up in a situation where you are dating and you are meeting people, suddenly the best version of you is shining forward
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the version of you that you're trying to use to attract someone.
And that's the stuff that's always fully our responsibility, right? Whether it's for dating or not. It's like,
Yeah.
what are we doing to do our own work and to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
Not because we're dating or for whatever other reason, right? So it's not like this burden of responsibility on us to like make other people safe, but what are we doing to make, I love that. I mean, I think safety is so huge in anything. Of course, as therapists, we're always thinking about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I laughed at how anti-rules, like of the rules that he is. I feel like coming from a man, I just like wasn't expecting that. But a part of me still subscribes to the rules because I mean, they're extreme. So are John's moves. And I think like the best approach is somewhere in the middle.
Oh, I love that.
But the rules were created to protect women and to not fully invest, not fully dive in before you feel confident that the man is available and that he is interested.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. And what do you think that is? Like that balance, that in between, right? What does that look? I mean, and I'm not saying we have an answer here, but what might that, what does that look like?
It's tricky. I think there's definitely a dance in between, but I think like all that we're responsible for, what we were just saying, is like our stuff and noticing what's coming up for us, noticing what we are doing or not doing, why that is, how that's come up, how that's indicative of maybe patterns or themes in our dating life, and just own our stuff and whatever your goals are, whatever work you're doing to hopefully have a more secure connection. Like that's the most that we can do on top of clearly communicating, as John is encouraging. But that's only half the equation. Like men have to be like, where's the literature again to tell men, here's how you effectively communicate. Here's what emotional availability is. Here's how women want to be treated. Here's how you can establish trust with a woman. There's nothing out there telling men to be better.
Well, I know. I think I could speak for one man in this room who is very interested. There are men that want to know. I think there are men that really want to know. And I'll shout Drew out, who's so amazing and has been part of this podcast journey from the beginning. Like he always says, he's like, I'm so fascinated by that, and he's asking questions, and he's curious, and he's inquisitive. And so there are men that he's amazing. But there are men that want to know, and I think that's the point. Is like, and why I guess I keep saying I want men on here, because I want to know their lens. And I think there are some men that do want to know a woman's lens too.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know about your clients, but I feel like I encounter so many clients who have done absolutely incredible work on themselves. And then they take their self out into the dating world. And it's like 9 times out of 10, it's emotionally unavailable men.
Yes.
And then every once in a while, there's like the needle in the haystack. And it's like the one guy who's like not playing games, who's like, hi, I want to take you out. And suddenly I've seen it so many times, and it's like no judgment because literally also me. So it's fine. But you get an emotionally mature man and all of a sudden it's like, hold on.
Yeah. What is this? Yeah.
Because you've been absolutely habitualized to emotionally immature men or emotionally unavailable men. So as much work as you're doing, you're still coming up against, I don't know, X amount in the dating pool of men who are reinforcing just through lack of action or lack of knowledge or just lack of personal growth because they don't have the resources. Like it's not, I don't want this to come across like I'm blaming the guys. I don't think that they have the resources available and they're not being promoted to take advantage of the resources available. to become emotionally competent at a level that I see hordes of women in our practice doing every single day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think what we're all trying to say today, it's like we're trying to understand everybody. We're not trying to blame anyone.
Yeah,
And maybe that was
100%.
part of what the anger or frustration of the book, that it was like so one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
And that the responsibility is with everybody, not just
Yeah.
one person. And that's a really good point, Lauren, because I had my own personal experience with sort of having someone show up in a very available way. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? Like too needy, too much. And I have clients that deal with that too. And I have a funny story of when Rob and I first started dating. I mean, my phone rings and he's calling, and I remember like, why is he calling me? Like,
Yeah.
why is he calling me? Because every form of communication was text. And it was like this moment of like, wait, what's happening here?
Yep.
But I mean, that was mature, very
Yeah.
mature. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, sort of recognizing that when you see it as that, like this emotional
Yeah.
maturity, not too much or too needy or
Yep.
too pushy or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I've noticed, I mean, I work primarily with women, but I do have a few male clients who are single, and there is just a lot of fear. And I think like our parents' generation is like one of the first generations to divorce, or the divorce rate is as high as it is now. I don't know. I don't feel like it was as high for our grandparents and like previous to them. And I've noticed that a lot of my male clients just like completely avoid, because their experience with their families being ruptured was so painful that they just do not want to create that. They don't want to cause that.
I've seen that too. They don't want to cause that.
Yeah. I don't know, again, the research or the findings behind that, but that's just something I've noticed in my work. I wonder if that's another thing to consider, along with like John bringing up the Me Too movement.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Again, like we got to be talking to more men and understanding. Any other reactions, takeaways, feelings on the book? Any other insights around dating, or how you both date, or how you each do your own work to kind of show up and date, with awareness and,
I'm like the poster child for dating avoidant men, which I love because I also have an anxious attachment style. And I know that
that's
about
the
myself.
worst cycle.
Yeah, I know. Everything's going to be fine, guys. Don't worry. But what's funny is like, as I was reading this book, I was, one of the things in it says like, go back to someone that you've dated if you still hold interest. And that to me was kind of like, okay, hang on. Because I think the part that he's leaving out, he says like, it's a great idea to go back to someone that you've previously dated if you had like a very amicable breakup and there's still love there, right? But I literally reviewed my entire dating history because I was there reading this book and I was like, here we go, we're going to apply it.
Doing it.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that you did that.
I was like, we got to do the work now. If I'm going to like talk it, I have to do it. And what came up is that so there's one particular partner who I dated 2 years ago who I absolutely loved, like head over heels in love. But I didn't have the awareness that I have now about where I was and how I handled an anxious attachment style and how they handled an avoidant attachment style.
Did you even have the labels for those things at that time?
Oh my God. No. The answer is no. Because I knew that I was like sort of anxiously attached and like just based on my dating history, but I assumed that he was securely attached.
Right.
Okay. And so like part of what's missing in the book, which I really wish was like added, was what does it mean for you to review your dating history through the lens of who you are right now versus who you were?
Ooh, amazing.
Because I'm a totally different person now.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming so is he. But you have to be really sure that you have done the work to change your side of the equation and really own your role in it. And that was just kind of like left out. Like if you're thinking about going back to a partner, if you're going back to someone that like you loved and cared about, I feel like you need to be really damn sure that you've covered your own ground and like healed what you needed to heal before you open that box up again. Because if not, it has a huge potential to just
repeat.
Yeah.
And ultimately, both people need to do that. Like, I have clients who will be considering getting back with exes, and I'm like, okay, we can do this. But I always walk them through, like, you both have to be on the same page of what went wrong, how you both contributed to that problem, what you're going to do differently this time. And you both have to be committed to doing that work and having a different result. Yeah. So that's a really good point that he just completely negated. He was just like, just go back in time. Yeah.
I feel like I can hear John being like, I'm not a therapist. Like but I think this just adds dimension to some of the things that he's saying. And I we had 2 episodes. I don't know him all that well, but I could see him saying, being open to that. And that's, I'm not a therapist. I'm a stats guy, and I never saw myself in this world. So
totally.
I think he'd be open to hearing all the feedback too. I think he's down for that. I think it's just, everyone has different perspectives and lenses, and it's so great to hear both of yours. And you've really opened, not that I didn't see it that way, but it's always helpful to have these conversations to hear other, reactions to it or responses to it. And I think you're right. I think dating's tough, period. And I think everyone is looking for a way to make it easier and not as hard and more enjoyable. I think at the end of the day, people just want to connect and meet somebody. And I think, it's hard. It's really, I give you both credit for still being in the dating world, but I think you two are so grounded in really great frameworks and mindsets. So that's why it's so nice to have you both here sharing all your thoughts and your insights as women who are dating and as therapists. Okay, so I wanted to touch on some of the things, the tactical things that John had suggested. So we could start with, or wherever you guys want to start, he says, date younger, get off the apps,
mixed color dating.
So let's choose one and dive in.
I guess the one that sticks out to me is dating younger, just because I had the most significant emotional response to it. What I heard him saying is encouraging women to date younger men, basically because, or prioritize dating when we're younger too, like in our 20s. He brought up the book, The Defining Decade, and how you should really prioritize dating when you're younger. But what I heard him say, it's basically because you're too naive to know better. And he brought up this musical chairs analogy when you're dating in your 30s and I think beyond. And he's right. It is more challenging. And I think we touched on that in our first episode together. We know ourselves so well. We know exactly what we want and what we deserve. And the pool is smaller. So reading that analogy hurt a little, mostly because it's true.
Yes. And his, I guess the first book, the stats support that, right? But it's discouraging. I would imagine it's discouraging.
Yes. So I'm glad that I didn't really prioritize dating in my 20s. Yeah. I'm glad that I prioritized my education and my career, and I'm really proud of the life that I've created for myself. Yeah. And if I prioritized dating and got into a relationship with a man that had red flags that I just didn't know any better and I didn't recognize, I wouldn't want that to be me.
Well, I also think in some of the things that we've been talking about today, and I can share, I can speak from my own experience, not knowing who I really was in my 20s and what I really wanted and what type of partner I really needed. And I didn't know that probably more well into my 30s after more life experience and growth and dating experience. And so I think your 20s is a very different decade than when and everybody's is different. I'll just speak from my own journey that I always say now, if I married who I was with in my 20s, I'd be like, I would not still be married. So I think there's growth that happens and more understanding. I think the point to dating younger, how I looked at that, I looked at it through this, also with the mixed color dating that we can talk about it. I being open to more people, right? I think sometimes, again, I'll speak only from my own experience, a certain type or a certain person, I had to be a certain way. Prior to meeting Rob, and Rob is blue collar, but he's also college educated. But prior to meeting Rob, my pattern was these I know I said this already, actors or chef on a yacht, these very exotic, unavailable, emotionally unavailable people. So for me, it wasn't about, education or age. It was open your vision up. So you see more, quality options, get out of your own way. Cause I wouldn't have honestly, a month earlier, I would have never even saw Rob. And I'm and I said this even when we were dating, union guy, lives in Rockland, boring. Yeah. It's the least boring person you'll ever meet. But I couldn't see that. So I sort of read that a little bit. And I hear what you're saying too, Julia, is just expand your visibility. Yeah. Open your mind up to other possibilities and people.
Yes.
I find it very interesting that he focused on the college graduate women, because as expansive as he wants them to be, it really comes across as like, oh, congratulations, you got what you've been striving for this whole time, which is more education. However, this is the price that you pay. And it was really that hard catch-22. So like, and that's where my anger stemmed from. It wasn't a lot of the anger as I was reading this book, like I kept having to put it down because I was so frustrated. Because there was so much of like.
Can I ask you guys to read it? I'm so sorry.
No, it's great.
I'm like, read this book. It's going to piss you off.
No, it's controversial. Yeah. I think it's good to think about these things.
But what was really frustrating is that it was like, here you have like worked so hard. Women have like traditionally fought to get more visibility into higher education. More visibility into spaces that we didn't have. And then all of a sudden, here's your catch-22. Like, congratulations. Oh, you worked really hard and you have a great job and you like got what you wanted. Guess what? No one's around for you to marry. Like, what? And The Defining Decade, which is a book that I've read this book 4 times. Okay.
Oh, okay. I've never read this book.
It's excellent. Highly recommend. I love Meg J. That book is so far from a dating book that I am like actually shocked that he even included it in this book, because the entire premise is that your 20s are a time to be spent to utilize in a way that feels right for you and a way where you follow your dreams. Now, if marriage is part of that, amazing, go get it. But a lot of what Meg J writes about is that we college students are given a lot of narratives like, you have all the time, don't worry about it. Yeah. Don't stress about your dreams, whatever. So we make them, we basically give them insecurity if they want to go after something. It's like, are you sure? You sure? You're way too young. You're way too young to know that's
time
right.
for that.
Right.
Well, that's the narrative where a lot of women in this sort of category of freezing their eggs, like I thought it would just happen that way. Right. So we're waiting. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So yeah, I'll have to read that book for sure.
It's an excellent book. But I also don't think that I would date younger. Like this is a working theory. I have absolutely no like factual basis behind this.
Let's hear it.
Outside of having lived it. There is like a pocket of time for men that is like, I guess, I don't know, 28 to 31, where all of a sudden like marriage or a steady relationship is off the table. Like if you don't catch them between that window,
it goes beyond 31, but okay.
But I feel like
I said, who's in that pocket?
But I feel like it's like works in pockets. It's like
41?
you like
Sorry.
Good.
Speaking from my own shit.
I feel like it works in pockets. It's like if you've met someone in college, then like you either lock them up in college and you hang on for dear life. Or you have to wait until you're like 25 where everyone panics and they say, oh God, everyone I know is getting married. And then 25 to 27 is like the crush of people who are suddenly engaged. And then there's just like the abyss. Yeah. Like the end of your 20s is this wide open space. And to be honest, like I don't know if I would want to date a 27-year-old who was like in panic mode because all of his friends are getting married. Like, does that make him a viable partner?
Yeah, I have this experience where when I was single, and here's how I read it because of this experience. When I was single and like dating and hanging out with people, I had a good friend of mine, and Shelly, you know who I'm talking about, who was 40. And I had a good friend of mine who was 27. And you put these two side by side, and the 27-year-old was far more mature than this 40-year-old. So I think it's like, and this is how we work as therapists, right? Person-centered. Like, who is this person in front of me? And maybe it's like removing the construct of age. And I love what you said, Julie. We said it off camera, but I do want to talk about it here. It's not about education, and maybe it doesn't have to be about age. It's about emotional availability, emotional maturity, right? So it's like, don't write somebody off, and listen, to each their own. But I had these two like side by side. I'm like, this guy is like gotta grow up, and this guy is like smart and cool and mature. So I think it's like, don't write someone. That's how I read it. Like, don't write someone off because of their age.
Yes. And I like that point. That's a good reminder. Like, he's really encouraging women to be open, but at the end of the day, I think emotional availability is like the number one like need and want in a partner. I would love to date a man in the trades or be in a serious relationship with them. Like, they could be a great repairman or plumber, have all these skills around our home, So I'm for that. But yeah, it's a good reminder. Just be open, but emotionally, how are you going to best connect with someone? How does this person make you feel safe? How does this person help make you feel secure?
Yeah. And for me, I think, before kind of recognizing my own dating patterns, like I dated in those constructs of like, it has to look like this. They have to be interesting in this way. They have to be cool in that way. I mean, and none of them were ever like for longevity. So it really took me getting out of those like boxes of what it had to look like to find my person. And that's sort of how I read the mixed colored and like date younger. That's how I read it.
Yeah.
I asked, I have like a ton of male cousins who are all like in their 20s. And I asked them like, what would you do if you dated up? And the funny part is that every single one of them in their like 26 maybe, every single one of them was like, I don't think that I would like have my life together enough for a 30-year-old. And that I hadn't considered that perspective. Like the pressure that men might be feeling if they're dating a more established woman, more established in her career, in her life, in whatever aspect.
That's a controversial topic too, which you were reading like a very awful comment on one of the episodes. Yeah, this intimidation factor that feels very controversial for men to hear that word. But again, like, let's get the dudes on here to kind of talk to us about this. But I hear that point too.
We were talking about this. Like, I don't feel like anyone, men or women, should ever feel the need to apologize for their successes and for the work that they've done in order to gain a partner.
Yeah. When we had Marsha on, one of the things that she had said in her research with women, the very established, incredible, successful women, that they would change their dating profiles to take their job off, take their education off. I'm like, no. That is like, we shouldn't be having to do that.
The right partner celebrates it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
No, go ahead. I got nothing.
I was just going to bring up John's point of being so against dating apps. And
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, I think like, Beth, you asked like where does this leave dating? Everyone's scared to show some vulnerability. Everyone wants to avoid getting hurt. And dating apps are great because they do kind of take away those initial questions of, are you single or are you interested in dating? Do you find me attractive? And are you close by? So, I mean, I don't know. I wonder why he was so against them. He's never had any experience with them. I know he backed up with a lot of research, but I know for me personally, I'm busy and I'm open when I am out and about. Like I have my eyes open to try to meet someone, but dating apps are very convenient. They're just a really great way just to come across people that I normally would not have crossed paths with. And I've been on great dates with men and been in short-term relationships with men who I've met on apps.
Yeah, I think I was saying when I am remembering now, like having him on this conversation about the dating app, and I think with anything, it's about balance, right? That, what he was saying is still going out into the world and meeting people and not only heavily relying on dating apps, but I think it's a lot of what we're saying too, like what are people comfortable with, right? If someone is very anxious, the dating app might be the best example. And I think, and this is where you both bring excellent viewpoints on mindset. If you're using the dating apps and being like, this sucks, I hate it, it's awful. And I have so many clients that's how they approach the dating apps. You approach anything like that, you're not really going to be successful. So there's this like hatred and frustration with the dating apps, but then it's what everybody's using. So maybe it's just like this mindset shift of like, here's another avenue of how I date. It's like I can meet wonderful people, or it is convenient, or I am busy and I like. So I think it's more for me. I look at it, and again, I can't speak. I had never used them that much, so I want to be mindful to give that disclaimer. But I think anything is kind of mindset. How are you approaching it?
It's a tool. So how are you utilizing that tool? How are you viewing it?
He provided some really good stats on the success rates of dating app relationships. And honestly, I will say, I do love his idea about like asking your friends who is available.
I think that, I love that. Take it into the universe.
100%. Yeah. Like, and if you trust your friends, you trust your friends, let them make a good judgment call. But it also requires that you know your weaknesses and your strengths. Like the worst is if someone's like, oh yeah, I'm totally like A, and then in reality, they're a completely different person. Yeah. It's not going to work. But if you have trustworthy friends, why not?
I think anything, like I give that advice to my clients too, in sort of that capacity, and even work. Like if you're looking for a job or you're looking for a partner, like have conversations put it out there. Like I think that's that vulnerability too. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know. Somebody knows somebody that knows somebody that could be a good fit, whether it's a job or or dating. So I think there's value. That's another tool. Like just talk about it. Talk about what you're looking for. Talk about what you want.
I've encouraged a lot of clients to create a secondary vulnerability.
Ooh.
Yeah, like a creative, because I've had a lot of clients say like, I find it so difficult on first dates, especially with like Hinge or Bumble matches, to either be really reserved and I feel like I don't connect, or I only know how to connect through intense vulnerability where I'm oversharing.
Oh, yeah.
Which is totally normal because you're out, you're trying to connect, you're just trying to get some version of like, okay, do I feel anything? And so they'll overshare. And then you get kind of like that anxious feedback of like, oh no, what did I do?
Too much.
Right. Like, what is this? So I've encouraged them to create like secondary vulnerability, which is deliberate stories or deliberate things that you feel comfortable sharing that highlight your personality. The same way you would go to a job interview and share stuff that was like your strengths and your weaknesses.
Yeah, I love that.
Why not? Like that's what you should be sharing on the first 2 or 3 days.
I love how you label that, because I've used that same thing, but without that label of secondary vulnerability. So share something about them that doesn't feel so scary. And one thing I recommend is like share something you enjoy. And if it's travel, share a story about where you've traveled. And I think that still reveals parts of yourself without feeling so too deeply vulnerable or too deeply scary.
Yeah, you have no obligation to go and share every single thing about yourself. But I often see that clients really want that connection. They really want to come out of a date and be like, yay, it was a match. It was so great. I was so attracted to that person. But attraction really is the matching of vulnerability. It's seeing yourself in someone else.
Right. So if people are unwilling to be vulnerable, where does that leave dating?
It's a dark place. I don't know. Do you want to answer this? Do you want me to answer it?
I don't know if there's an answer. It's just like, it's where are we headed? How can things improve? What is our responsibility, our personal responsibility to our own journey in dating, I think is important to think about.
Yeah. I think like what I do, and I think I shared this earlier too, is just like really be mindful of when I'm enjoying dating and when I'm not. And I want to be showing my best version of myself. I want to be advertising and marketing my best self, and that's not always possible. So if I'm feeling frustrated or if I'm feeling discouraged, just taking a step back and waiting until I'm excited and I'm ready, because I want dating to be fun. And like I said earlier as well, I think if a relationship isn't working out for me, I have more space and time for my other values and the other parts of my life that give me a lot of joy and bring me a lot of meaning.
I think that is so great. And I think that's an amazing mindset to adopt. I think what some women come against, and maybe not, maybe for women further along in their 30s or wanting to partner, is like, I'm running out of time. I think that's great. I think the pause is amazing. I think you should sort of acknowledge where you're at and how you're showing up or who you're showing. I think that's amazing. I think what I've seen happen is that women are like, I don't have time to do that.
Yeah.
I'm running out of time. I'm this age. I have to meet this person. And it's, to your point, it's counterproductive to dating. So I think we talked a lot today about like pausing and being patient. And I think there's so much value in that.
Yes. Yeah.
Any parting words for our audience?
Oh, yeah. I think just going off of what you just said about like trying to take John's book and utilize it, because I think it can be a really good tool. But I will say this: if you're going to take rules for the dating world, you have to be in a place where you can decipher what is actually stuff that you want to take on, not just because someone's giving it to you.
Yeah.
And that kind of feels like, what is the game changer between you dating just to find someone to make you feel good versus you dating, which can actually be an incredible experience.
Yeah.
If you're in a place with yourself where you're like, hold on, I can identify and choose what feels good for me. And I'm going to, pick the right date spot for me. I'm going to pick the right person for me to go out with. All of a sudden, dating becomes a hell of a lot more enjoyable.
Well, and I think, and the approach to, and a lot of what the women who've come on here and shared their egg freezing journey, especially their egg freezing journey as single women, is that once they did it, because that took the pressure off.
Yeah.
But prior to doing it, it was this, they were going into dating with this pressure of like, I have to meet my husband, I have to meet my partner. And it just changed the experience so much. It didn't give them an
Yeah.
opportunity to be like, well, what do I want? Or who is this
Right.
person in front of me? So I think that's the work too, is like getting yourself to a good place, whether that is egg freezing, whether that's understanding your attachment or your narratives, like getting your good, so you can see like, what do I want and who is, and can this person who's sitting across from me offer that?
You're a good partner, or no, how do I say this? Your self-worth is not defined by the partner that you have. And that is what we were raised in. We were raised to learn that like, oh, honey, it's okay. You're going to be enough when you get married. It's okay. When your partner shows up, don't worry, you're going to be more. You're going to be worth more. No, your self-worth is not defined by the partner that you have. Your self-worth is defined by you. And the best version of a partner that you can have is someone that makes you even better than you already are. But they don't make you who you are.
Oh, boom, mic drop.
I get real fired up about
All right,
this.
Julie, follow that. Parting words.
I kind of just following up on that. I remind my clients too, your worth is not defined by your relationship status, you know, like, and I think I shared this in our first episode together. Like a lot of dating just comes down to luck and timing.
Yeah.
But I remember one thing you put in our notes, Beth, as we were preparing is like, where does this leave dating now? Like people are scared of rejection, scared of hurt. It's clear women are willing and able to do this work and willing to try new things, which is wonderful. And I think while, you know, we're all working through this, I always encourage my single clients, like a relationship is not the only type of meaningful connection.
love that. Yeah.
And I think right now, as I'm single, I have more time for myself. I have more time for my family. I have more time for girlfriends. I have more time for my career, for my pet, like all of these great things. So a relationship is not everything. It's something, but it's not everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we had Emma Wilson on earlier. She's turning 30 coach. She puts up incredible content and talking about enjoying those single years. And then when you do find that partner, and that's been my experience too, and I love where I'm at and I love Rob, but like being single can be really, really great. It is really, really great.
Yes.
So you too enjoy and you come back and you report back to us on all things dating and all things 30s in your life. And you two are incredible. And thank you again for being here again.
You're welcome.
I guess I have to keep this trend going. You're going to have to come back for season 3.
I love doing this.
Thank you all for joining us again with Julie and Lauren, two incredible women and therapists, sharing all things related to dating and reactions to being bold and making your move. If you're enjoying these episodes, please subscribe to our channel. Check us out on Instagram, our website, quiettheclock.com. If you're ready to take charge of your relationship journey, visit quiettheclock.com today to download your free copy of Balancing the Biological Clock, Expert Advice on Handling an Unready Partner. This is a guide I created for those navigating the complex terrain of differing timelines with your partner. It will provide you with exclusive insights on understanding your relationship by sparking meaningful conversations and encouraging you to take unconventional action in the face of life's most important decisions. Again, head over to quiettheclock.com now and claim your free copy of Balancing the Biological Clock, Expert Advice on Handling an Unready Partner.